Senator Feinstein, would you like to weigh in on the defense authorization bill? Sure, she would.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye. Pardon me? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Who, me?
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
What do I do here?
aye.
Thank you.
Oh, she's so cute. Yeah.
Oh, is she 90 years old?
Dianne Feinstein, for those wondering, like Mitch McConnell and every other 80 or 90-year-old in power in D.C., is in the best cognitive and physical shape of their life.
It's almost like elder abuse watching this. I mean, I know it was funny and people laugh, but it's some serious stuff. And Mitch McConnell just blanking and staring. I thought he might have had a mini stroke the other day. And a reporter asked right away when he came back, said, who's going to replace you? That was the first question out of the box. It's like they're so used to their politicians being old and flaking out or going to happy places.
There's a movie for you to watch this weekend, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. Actually, an excellent movie. It's about a French fashion magazine, Elle, I think it was, editor who suffers locked-in syndrome, and he can only blink one eyelid, just locked in. It's inexplainable.
Wow.
Suffered that for the rest of his life. It's something that's obviously neurological in nature, and he learned to communicate by just blinking his eye, working with a nurse to like signal letters, and he wrote a book that way, blinking one eyelid. So it's sort of an incredible story, and it's also good news because that means that Di-Fi and Mitch McConnell and every other 80 and 90-year-old can be with us for as long as they can at least blink one eyelid. And that inspires a lot of confidence, too, by the way, people like Senator Di-Fi having, significant authority over things that are of somewhat importance, like defense budget that relates to our national security. Mm-hmm. Inspires confidence. Sure. Well, in a related story, again, to my point, Mick Jagger celebrates his 80th birthday with a hug from his 6-year-old son. Like every 80-year-old enjoys.
Dad?
Want to have a catch. He would have had a catch, but...
Dad, can I play with your ARP card?
ARP? I think we're a little beyond that at 80.
Wow.
Would have had a catch, but he, afraid he'd pull something or drop something like a limb. For more on the state of affairs with our military, pleased to be joined by Seth Cropsey, president and founder of the Yorktown Institute, that is, former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He served as the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy in the Reagan administration and as acting Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict, the best kind, in the George H.W. Bush administration. And he's also a South Sider. Seth Cropsey, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Nice to be here.
Good to have you. So, we've talked a lot about Generals Milley and Austin over the last couple of years as they have gotten into all sorts of areas of social policy with respect to race and with respect to gender, and how is this enhancing the cohesion of our military and thus their effectiveness in providing for our security, not to mention against the backdrop of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which they claim wasn't a disaster. But you hit upon something else that we should be concerned about with respect to Milley in particular as he's set to retire. And what is that, the future Jointness Czar that you write about? Why is this an area of concern?
Well, what Milley wants is another layer of bureaucracy in the Pentagon that would be very powerful because it would have the ability to make fundamental decisions about what shape and size and technology and doctrine the military services use. And the problem with that is that that's taking critical decisions about the shape and character of our military away from the people who understand it best, which is to say the individual services which are trained in it, and giving it to a staff, and at the same time creating another level of bureaucracy which the Pentagon does not need.
And what's the theory behind what Milley is doing from his perspective? What would he argue this is necessary because?
Because the services fight with each other, because they don't see the whole picture, because a general staff, which is a long-standing Army project, is in the best position to make decisions about all the services, and it's a misinterpretation of jointness, at least understood by the previous 20 years of how chairmen and members of the Joint Chief have interpreted it.
So, in addition to a threat that is presented as a solution, um, what is the fundamental challenge that the United States military has today? Not the technological one, but the organizational one, in your view.
The fundamental challenge is that we are in at very best, an interwar period, and more likely a pre-war period vis-a-vis China. Ukraine doesn't make things any easier as far as Europe is concerned, and the military budgets have at best been keeping pace with inflation, while our competitors and possible enemy continue to increase their military budgets and their military forces, really outpacing us. China has a larger navy than we do, at least in number of vessels. Iran is on the verge of having a nuclear weapon, and look at what's going on in Ukraine. It's the Ukrainians are having some successes, but it's a hard slog, and we're simply not acting as though the possibility of war exists, nor, and this is equally important, the possibility of deterring that war.
Now, Mark Milley is going to be stepping down soon, and Biden has picked General Charles Brown Jr. as the next chairman. Is he going to be any better or any different?
He hasn't shown the same indication as Milley has throughout his chairmanship and even before to get politically involved. The whole equation has been thrown off kilter because the last two administrations have appointed recently retired military officers to the civilian position, the Secretary of Defense. And that distorts military ambition at the highest level in a bad way, which is to say that generals and admirals who see the possibility or a path to becoming Secretary of Defense are more likely to shade their opinions politically in order to please their political masters, which in this case means the President and the Secretary of Defense. And that's not good for the country. It's much better that the senior officers, especially at the highest ranks, give the military opinion rather than think about how it's going to sound with the person they're providing it to.
So that's interesting. So you would advise, if you were advising a president, an ex-president, any presidential candidates, you would say, don't make senior military officers parts of your cabinet. Don't make them chief of staff. Let them stay in their lane and know that they're to give opinions based on their belief, consistent with their expertise, and not based on aspirations to have more profile.
Yes, and that means keeping them out of the senior civilian positions.
Yeah.
Like Chief of Staff or Secretary of Defense. Yeah. I mean, these officers have a lot to provide, and it's not a reflection on their competence or seriousness or expertise, but it is a reflection of how the political system operates. That if given the ambition and the possibility of advancement to more powerful positions, they'll respond.
Well, and it's also a reminder that the armed services are civilian controlled in this representative republic. That it's the president is the commander in chief, the civilian control of the military, not military control of the military.
That's right.
I want just speaking about Millie and Austin. I mean, in my view, they've been really obsequious and terrible. Some of the answers about critical race theory and the books that are being assigned, and the gender stuff, and financing all of these trans surgeries and procedures, and reducing the standards that need to be met by the enlisted because of their gender identity. I mean, all this stuff is terrible, but by the same token, it's been in the works for a long time in the military, just like in our political culture. I mean, I have very limited view on this, but I just remember going to the Army War College in Camp Hill for their week-long civilian seminar, where you get to interact with, senior people that are moving up the ranks moving up the officer ranks. The same thing with the Navy War College in Newport, and it wasn't so much the men and women that were enlisted that you got to interact with. That was really enjoyable, like smart, talented people. But the speakers that the branches brought for the combination of civilian and military folks in attendance, I mean, they were sort of left-leaning at best, political hacks that were spewing a bunch of stuff that I was, frankly, a decade ago, surprised to hear being sponsored by the armed services with respect to their future officer corps. And I just wonder what your perspective is on how long this drip, drip, drip in the military of cultural poison has been going on.
Well, I wouldn't call it cultural. I wouldn't say that it's a decades-long history of toxic dripping. It is a decades-long history of trying to use the military or using the military as an instrument of social change. And this goes back at least to the Carter administration. So there's nothing new and there's nothing good about it. The job of the military is to be prepared to defend the country and do so if called on. And a lot of this stuff that you're talking about doesn't really have anything to do with learning how to navigate a ship or operate a helicopter against tanks or do any of the other military tasks that are critical if the United States is going to be successful in the battlefield.
He is Seth Cropsey, president and founder of the Yorktown Institute, former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He served as the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy under President Reagan. Seth Cropsey, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word